Time Walk with me.
Hey everybody! Welcome back to Time Walk with me. I am the Time Walker, and here is the $16.12 I owe you. Please don't make me eat my parents. This is my newly double overhauled Zaxara the Exemplary deck. Zaxara is a 2/3 Nightmare Hydra with Death Touch who costs the number 1, 1 skull, 1 tree, and 1 Magateer to cast. It taps for 2 mana of any one color, and whenever you cast a spell with X in its mana cost, you get a 0/0 green Hydra creature token that you put X +1/+1 counters on. My old Zaxara deck was built to put a lot of counters on creatures so I'd get a lot of big Hydras too, but now I'm doing the opposite. Now I'm casting X spells and choosing 0 for X and watching the mayhem ensue. I stole this idea from the commander's quarters, so if you hate this deck, blame Eddie. These creatures all have X in their mana costs, and they all have base power and toughness 0/0. Nothing else about them matters. When they hit the battlefield, they trigger Zaxara and create a 0/0 Hydra. Then both creatures immediately die. Why would I do that? Am I some kind of grade A moron who wouldn't even make it in Bovine University? Capricopian, Contortionist Troop, Cryptic Trilobite, Endless One, Hungering Hydra. It came from planet Glurg. I included this because it would amuse my playgroup. You can put in something else if your pod has no sense of humor. Ivy Elemental, Marketback Walker, Omarthus Ghostfire Initiate, Phyrexian Marauder, Shifting Wall, Stonecoil Serpent, Ugin's Conjurant, Wildwood Scourge, and Ren's Run Hydra. When my 2 0/0 creatures die, they both cause death triggers to happen. Agent of the Iron Throne. This simply bops all of your opponents on the head when one of your creatures or artifacts dies. Since Zaxara gives you a bonus doomed creature when you cast a spell with X in its mana cost, your X creature spells will trigger cards like this twice. Bastion of Remembrance. The token creature this enchantment creates makes a good chump blocker and death trigger triggerer, but the main reason for it is that it pings your opponents and gives you a life when one of your creatures dies. Butcher of Malakir. This one will get some hate. When one of your creatures dies, everyone else has to sacrifice a creature so you can all mourn together. Compy Swarm. This one triggers once during your end step as long as a creature died during the turn. The cool thing is that it looks around for dead stuff on your opponent's battlefields as well as your own. Each time it sees something kick the bucket, it doubles in number and has no idea what a bucket is because it's a dumb dinosaur. Drivnod Carnage Dominus. This crazy looking guy makes your death triggers happen an additional time and can be made indestructible. Funeral Room / Awakening Hall. This is here for the Funeral Room, which takes life from your opponents and gives one to you when one of your creatures buys the farm. But the Awakening Hall is pretty cool too if you have a full graveyard. Ghost Lantern / Bind Spirit. The adventure part of this card can come in handy if you draw it later in the game, and the lantern builds up a creature when one of your creatures dies if you get it early or after you cast the adventure. Grim Haruspex. This lets you draw cards but only when a non-creature token you control dies. High Society Hunter. This also lets you draw a card when a non-token creature dies, but it doesn't have to be one that you controlled. Moldervine Reclamation. This enchantment does its thing when any of your creatures dies, and its thing is to give you a life and a card. Nadier's Nightblade. This takes a life from opponents and gives you a life when one of your tokens leaves the battlefield. Poison Tip Archer. Here's an elf archer that just bops your opponents when any creature dies. It also has reach and death touch, which is pretty cool. The Massimune. This doubles the death trigger abilities of the creature holding it. Your opponents do not want it in the hands of the Butcher of Malakir. Vela the Nightclad. This lady hurts your opponents when she or another creature you control leaves the battlefield, not just when it dies. And Zombie Ogre. This dude's ability triggers at the end of your turn, so it only goes off once per turn, but it sends you through a dungeon, so that's cool. These aren't creatures, but they still trigger Zaxara to make a doomed Hydra. Some or all of them might even be worth casting for more than 1x. Astral Cornucopia. Even the Score. And Tyvar's Stand. This one gives a creature hexproof and indestructible even if you cast it for 0x's. Usually it's better to get a creature back onto the battlefield than in your hand. but in this deck it's better to get them in your hand so you can cast them and stuff. Most of the cards in this section bring back 2 creatures at a time. I didn't waste my time or yours by putting in instants and sorceries that only bring back 1. Back for seconds. You can bargain this to make it put one of the creatures you targeted back onto the battlefield, but like I just explained, it's better to have them in your hand. But the option is there if you want to use it on a death trigger creature instead of 2 X creatures. Paying the bargain cost does give you the death trigger you missed out on by not casting the creature you put directly onto the battlefield. Death Denied. This is great for later in the game when you have a whole lot of X creatures in your graveyard, you have a few death triggerers on the board, and you want to go for the win. Plus, it's an instant, so you can cast it in response to something. Fight On. This one is simple. Get 2 creatures into your hand from your graveyard, and since it says up to, you can pick 1 or none if you want, and it's an instant. Find/Finality. You get up to 2 dudes back for 2 mana. Macabre? I don't know how you pronounce that word. Reconstruction. This costs half as much if one of your creatures has already died, and there's a good chance that it came out and died for free, so it can make a turn quite a bit more effective for very little mana. Oversold Cemetery. This gives you a creature back every turn if you have at least 4 creatures in your graveyard. Phyrexian Reclamation. This can cheaply and repeatedly give you back your creatures, and the life you pay can be offset by life gain triggers from the creatures dying immediately. Sanguine Indulgence. If you have some life gain triggers out and you've benefited from them by 3 life, this spell can be cast quite cheaply. Soul Salvage. This is Fight On, but a sorcery. Urborg Repossession. This can give you back 1 or 2 creatures. Viconia Drow Apostate. This is a creature version of Oversold Cemetery. If you want, you can make a deck around it. And Whale of War. This is a strictly better Fight On. It's an instant for 3 mana, it can bring back 2 creatures, and it gives you a choice between doing that and giving all of an opponent's creatures -1/-1 until end of turn. I recently played against a guy using a really good Saproling deck who would not like this. Clever Conjurer. This Conjurer of cheap tricks is here to untap Zaxara so you can tap her for more mana. Clever Impersonator. This shapeshifter can copy any non-land permanent on the battlefield. It's useful for getting another death triggerer, or you can copy someone's commander and play their deck a little bit in addition to their own. Death Sprout. This kills a threat and ramps you. Pretty good for 4 mana. Instill Energy. Like the Clever Conjurer, this is here to untap Zaxara so you can make more mana. More mana, fewer problems. Intruder Alarm. This is a component in many infinite combos, and this deck has one. If you have Zaxara, Intruder Alarm, Phyrexian Reclamation, an X creature, and a card that takes life from opponents when a creature dies, you win the game. It's 5 cards though, so it's unlikely to happen, so your opponents will probably not mind it being in the deck. Kelpie Guide. This untaps Zaxara, and later in the game it can tap something down. Null Profusion and Recycle. These are basically the same card, but in different colors. Recycle came first, and I guess Wizards thought it was such a great card, it had to be made in black too. With one of these out, you can burn through your deck and burn through your opponents very quickly. Putrefy. 3 mana to kill a creature or artifact. Nice. Quina, Cool Gourmet. When you get a Doomed Hydra, this clue also gives you a frog, which you can feed to her for more death triggers. Spark Double. This guy can copy Zaxara without either of them dying, so you can get double the Doomed Hydras. And Voracious Varmint. This dude gives its life to disenchant something and give you a death trigger. This deck operates on not a ton of mana, and some of it is provided by the commander, but I still put in some mana dorks so that if they get killed, they give you death triggers. Elementalist's Palette. This gets 2 charge counters whenever you cast a spell with X in its mana cost, even if you pay 0 for the X. Once it has a good number of counters, you can use it to make one of those spells really big instead of dead immediately. Glittermonger. This guy makes treasure tokens, so you can save the mana up for something big. Hard Bristle Bandit. This dork only costs 2 and taps for a mana of any color, something that usually makes a creature cost 3, and it can potentially tap for 1 more if you commit a crime. Rainveil Rejuvenator. This taps for 2 green or more if you make it stronger. Underseller Myconid. This dork gives you a chump blocker when it enters and another when it dies, and while it's alive, it taps for a mana of any color. Undercity Scrounger. This taps to give you a treasure token as long as a creature has died this turn. It doesn't care whose creature died either, so if you had to go a turn without dooming a couple of X creatures, maybe an opponent will lose something. And Weaver of Blossoms / Blossom-clad Werewolf. Day and Night is an annoying mechanic, but when Night gives you a creature that taps for 2 mana, you should go ahead and inconvenience everyone. We got Forest Islands and Swamps, obviously. Command Tower, Contaminated Aquifer, Exotic Orchard, Haunted Mire, Lair of the Hydra, of course. I actually had to order one of these for this deck. Mistvault Bridge, Mortuary Mire, this gives you back one of your 0/0 guys. Opulent Palace, Quandrix Campus, Spawning Bed, this gives you 3 1/1s with a built-in sack outlet. Tangled Islet, and Witherbloom Campus. And that's it! I wish I'd come up with this idea, but I merely copied it. But I like to think I made it my own a little. Tell me what you think in the thoughts receptacle, and remember, Charlie Kirk was murdered by a member of the Trump cult.